You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. Welcome to Volatility Views, the premier program for volatility traders. Each week, we'll take a deep dive into the world of volatility with in-depth analysis, trading activity reviews, strategy breakdowns, cutting-edge education, and much more. We'll also bring you exclusive conversations with the traders, researchers, and asset managers who are reshaping the volatility landscape. If it involves volatility, then you'll find it on Volatility Views. And now, it's time to take a deep dive into the world of volatility. It's time for Volatility Views.
All right, everybody. That music means we are back once again. Time to rock out on the network one final time for all you on-demand folks for a little bit of Volatility Views, the premier program for volatility traders. My name, of course, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as from the network upon which all you folks are having a good time this week. Lots of content coming at you throughout the week, so make sure if you like what you hear, this show, anything else on the network, throw a like, a star, a comment. It all does help at the end of the day. New people continue to discover the smorgasbord that is the network. And, of course, if you want to go above and beyond, you don't want your broadcast week to end with Volatility Views. You want to get all sorts of other fun and crazy trade ideas. Come back for Options Oddities in a little bit. Welcome to all those folks who joined us this week from the pit land. a lot of pitties joining us this week. So welcome to all those folks coming in on the pro. You want to join the fun? theoptionsinsider.com/pro is the place to go to learn more. Get in there soon because we're coming up against it for the July Pro Trading Crate. Man, you folks are just really conspiring to clean out our vault of all of our awesome goodies from the world of options for 17 plus years now. Spoiler alert, we got a lot. So we still have ways to go. I'm kidding. But you folks are doing your darndest to clean us out of some really cool, often unique stuff that, quite frankly, probably we could sell. But we won't. We give it to you folks instead. Also educational stuff and all sorts of fun. Get it all at the pro. Theoptionsinsider.com/pro is the place to go. As we go around the horn, see who's joining us on the program today. I am pleased to say I saw both of these fellows in person earlier this week at the old Option Pit Super Summit. I believe that's what they're calling it these days. That's what the cool kids are calling it. Let's start out over there on the shores of Maine. Yes, listeners, I can confirm I have proof of life. He does leave the shores of Maine once in a while, usually to come have a delicious steak in Chicago. He is the rock lobster himself, Mr. Andrew Giovinazzi from OptionPit.com, who got the full Chicago experience this week. Mr. Rock Lobster, welcome back to the show. How was your sojourn to the big city this week?
It was good. I have to say, it took me, I didn't really get my city bearings back until, probably when I was getting on the blue line back to O'Hare.
You're like, what are all these people doing here? Oh, it's weird.
Well, I mean, I just, I had to go back at 8:00 and I like traffic, taxi, Uber. I'm like, the blue line for $5. It's hard to beat it, to be quite honest.
It is hard to beat it. And sir,
it is not beneath me. Let's just say that.
Really quickly at the start of the show here, for the folks who weren't there, couldn't check out the Super Summit, give them a quick overview. Maybe they want to check out the next one. A lot of cool vol talk there, sir.
Yeah, I mean, we had Jim Carroll, we had Russell, we had Noel from Convex, trading. Like all kinds of good stuff. We had Kevin Green from Charles Schwab showing people how like all the cool stuff on TOS for 0DTE. Even you gave away goodies to the attendees, which the pro, like, unbelievable. Tusa on how to manage basically, protected equity strategies, outperforming the Thompson brothers on strategic volatility allocation, basically, picking spots, which is kind of what we do teach our students at Option Pit. Better to wait till things are starting to do something than just blindly buy a bunch of juice that goes to zero. So, we probably had 12 speakers. All of them were very good. I grabbed something out of everybody. Really quite a if you want to learn more about options and ideas to trade, and like kind of bigger picture stuffs, also to be an investor, it's a great summit. Mark did a really good job of putting the speakers together. So I was quite pleased with how it went. And Russell actually unveiled a little goodie too, a little calendar goodie, which I thought was quite nice that I'm poking around with. So, he always brings good stuff to those to our events, and he did it again. What the heck? What a surprise.
A surprise, as we are also joined by the once, future, and present Dr. VIX/VSTOXX, Mr. Rhoads. I also saw him in person this week. Mr. Rhoads, welcome back to the show to you as well, sir.
He's thrilled to be here. I don't know if your producer has told you, but you're going to see me next Tuesday.
Oh, I'm terrified. Uh-oh.
So, yeah, I'm going to be on your pro Q&A Tuesday. So we'll talk more about the calendar thing that Andrew just hinted at, because that's a completely different market than what we talk about here. We'll probably talk about some of the block trading research that I did as well. I got to be on the option block for the first time ever.
Yes, that was fun.
I'm very excited. I got to figure out how many different programs I've been on now.
You might, I don't know. Sebastian's up there. He's been on a bunch, including a few that never made it to air, hint, hint. We'll see. Maybe we'll do a calculation behind the scenes as we keep on rolling into the volatility review.
It's time to break down the latest developments in the volatility trading world. It's time for the Volatility Review.
All right, listeners, welcome to the Volatility Review. And man, we've done a whole bunch of living since the last time we gathered here together on the program. You wouldn't know it if you looked at VIX Cash, though. It is literally unchanged from where it was this time last week. We went out around a 60.5 last week, 60.5 exactly as we kicked off the show. So, that's it. Show's over. Nothing happened this week. You would never know that a sitting president and leading nominee stepped down, at least from the nomination part, over the weekend. We saw a rally early in the week. Then we saw a lot of tech wreck earnings and a lot of hand-wringing out there. We saw massive sell-offs. We saw VIX Cash actually rally, start to threaten the 20 handle, got up to about 1930 or so, I believe, intraday. So that's a level we haven't seen in some time. And then, of course, now coming into today, after another day, yesterday, crazy whipsaws, selling off hard again in the NASDAQ. NASDAQ, of course, earlier this week having this worst day in about 2 years, off somewhere in the ballpark of 4% at one point. And then yesterday, selling off hard in the opening, then rallying equally hard, up 1+% as we were doing the option block yesterday, then right back down red again, then up again and down. It was an insane whipsaw day yesterday. And then coming into today, of course, PCE, apparently the shot in the arm that everyone was waiting for. The bulls were starting to scramble a little bit. AI was starting to look weak. Valuations starting to look heavy. Markets were starting to get clobbered session after session. They couldn't maintain the bid yesterday. And along comes PCE today, a.k.a. the Fed's preferred inflation gauge. Gives the market a nice shot in the arm, coming in pretty much cool. And the market's up now 1.5%, pretty much across the board. The Dow up nearly 2% today. And yet you never know it by looking show to show at VIX Cash, because it is literally unch. So yes, nothing to see here, listeners. A very quiet week on the vol front, nothing to pay attention to. Small caps, of course, the story of the last couple of weeks, up 1.3% right now. So yeah, even though that number may look like, yeah, we could end the show right now. A heck of a lot. Some unprecedented things happened since the last time we gathered here together on the show. All that baking into a VVIX, which is still frothy. Again, ignoring the VIX cash for a second. VVIX at about a 96. That's even almost unched, down about a point from last week. Anything threatening triple digits, things are frothy, things are heated out there in the market. So a lot to unpack. Let's go around the horn the opposite of the way we came. Let's start with the once, future, and present Dr. VIX and VSTOXX, sir. What caught your eye out there in a very tumultuous vol week, sir?
I find it funny that we've done some sort of really weird round trip where we're pretty close to where we started.
Nothing to see here, sir.
But that's definitely not telling the whole story behind what happened this week. We threatened the 20s. We didn't get there, but we threatened the 20s. And it really is kind of funny to see that we're practically that if you're a candlestick chartist, you're going to see one of those really big dojis right now after a wider range the previous week. But the wider range the previous week, started low and ended high. So I don't know if that's I anytime I even joke about technical analysis and VIX, I get absolutely eviscerated. You wouldn't believe some of the things that people have said to me in the past when I start talking about charting and VIX. But it does kind of look like it's popping its head up and like the thing that like the game with the mallets, where when it pops its head off, the only way that you really can profit is by hitting it real quick. And maybe it's telling us it's getting ready to reverse to the downside.
Speaking of hitting things quick, I know a lot of people listen to vol views, and they mainline vol views. They love it. We love everybody listens to everything, but we know there's a core dedicated vol views audience out there. We did talk about your UVIX trade right on the open on the option block on Monday. I know there's some people out there who didn't hear our live option block. So really quickly, we kind of went off the air last week. All of us pretty much diving deep into UVIX, buying it right towards the close there. Walk our listeners through really quickly how that unfolded, sir.
Sure, and also you were not there on Wednesday when I spoke. I had some updated numbers with respect to that. So I was gonna mention that a little later when we got to the ETP part, but I can talk about it now.
We'll do it now. We'll get more UVIX later, but let's. People are waiting for this, I'm sure.
Yeah. What I discovered a few weeks ago was if you bought UVIX on the close on Fridays and you held it to the open on Mondays, you'd make money about 45% of the time or so, but you would but the net move was actually a positive. So it was kind of just thought of it as a kind of inexpensive way to hedge against any sort of weekend risk. And of course, we started talking about it on here a few weeks ago, and then last week I did it, Andrew did it, Mark did it. I almost canceled my appearance at the conference because I didn't want to face them on this one. But it was it was not a good weekend to have done it last weekend. Even though we had a sitting president for the first time since Johnson say they weren't going to run again. I don't know what it's going to take. Just adding to it, and then I've got two more parts, and then I'll put out a full presentation on it. But I ran it with UVXY, VXM, and VXX going back to 2018, and it worked okay for all of those as well. So it's not just a case of UVIX being launched in 2022. The final thing that I want to do, and this is the one that takes a little time, I want to take a look at buying the front month and selling the second month on Friday and covering it at 8:30 Chicago time on Monday. That because VIX futures open in the evening, open close data can be a bit difficult. So I've got to basically get intraday data and tease out all the numbers that I'm going to need for that. And then I'm also just going to take a look at what if you bought the front month future and held it over the weekend. Just to see if it's just in the ETPs or does it show up in the futures markets as well.
The thing I was kind of banking on with that too, I always, at the end of the day, the weekend effect should come in to save you, right? But it didn't this time. And I think it's interesting to watch is that we didn't really, what we had, usually we have VIX and UVIX declining into the weekend, and then you get it back on Monday. We had UVIX and VIX rallying into the weekend, which is a somewhat aberrant scenario these days. We don't see that too often. So I wonder if we isolate the data for that, because it seemed like we almost got the weekend taken out on the opening print on Monday versus doing it on Friday, and that kind of worked against us this time, which is kind of interesting. So I wonder, it might be interesting to isolate the data for those small handful of periods where UVIX is actually rallying into the weekend and see how that works.
Was totally planning on doing something along those lines. Really, more of if UVX was up during the week, did it work over the weekend? Was one thing that I was thinking about, because I had the easy weekly data there, but intraday as well, Thursday to Friday. Also taking a look at what did the stock market do, the week before we go into the weekend. If it's a red week for the stock market, are people worried about some follow through over the weekend, those sorts of things. So yeah, I'm gonna have to go down into my dark lab and do a whole lot of number work on this one. But I think there is actually something here.
There is something here. A lot of people reached out to me too about the notion of using the options instead. The liquidity I don't think is there yet, but it could be an intriguing idea if things juice up a little bit down the road out here in UVIX. Again, I don't want to belabor the UVIX thing too much at the start of the show here, but I know a lot of you were intrigued by this. And again, it's an intriguing idea worthy of further investigation. Mr. Rock Lobster, I know you were down with the UVIX party, so you were a little disgruntled on Monday. You were ready. I had to hold you back from Dr. VIX on Monday, I know. But what else caught your eye in the vol space this week, sir?
Yes, thankfully there wasn't a death. There was no death at the when we were doing the OI, when we're doing the option block on Monday. So yeah, I got out of there as prescribed. On the opening print, we're like, okay, we're not seeing any action. And then I think at some point I think UVIX rallied a little bit a couple of days later, and then we'll see how it. I think. Just as a testament to the greatness of the product, let me see here. After all that action, I just have to do, because I don't have it up right now.
It also is literally unched right now from where I bought it a week ago. Literally.
Yeah, I was about to say. So it is after all that action, which I believe is the kind of the fun of the product. Yeah. So
I paid $6.12 last week. It's $6.14 right now.
Yeah. So it hasn't even. It did get up to what, $7? It got up to $7.20. So it did move when we were at the height of the panic there. So yeah, I like the idea. I think, and actually Russell, it was nice having just Russell there to kind of bounce a couple of ideas on. We did talk a little weekend effect, and how that could basically kind of allow you to how to steal a little decay out of the product. I definitely think I never thought of it like that before. I have done one of my students is a professor, a mathematics professor, and we've done some forward vol stuff, like Monday, like doing Friday, Monday trades, how low the forward vol gets into the weekend. Basically, the Monday, sometimes the Monday, the Monday, Friday calendars are free. Basically, from a vol point of view, anyway. Or you get the weekend for free if the vol's so low on a Monday. So, I think there's like definitely something kind of cool there that I'll look at when they do that serious compression. And I think it might be a function too if Russell could throw in when VIX is really low, like zone 1 low. The frequency of the pop, I think, could be kind of significant. So, as usual, Russell always brings good stuff. Like because he researches the numbers deep and comes up with, I don't know where it comes up out of that brain of his, but some very clever ways to look at options, which is ultimately, since you can do whatever you want with options, you might as well think of some clever uses. So it also, for me personally, it's like, okay, if I'm thinking too opposite. If I'm going to lean into some UVIX, like buy, let's say 500 shares or something for the weekend, I probably should close more of my VIX puts because you're not gaining a lot sometimes by holding things, or not, you're only trying to squeak out the last bit of future decay in them. Probably, and I tend to hold them too long. That is my that is my volatility sin for sure. So, but I really enjoyed having Russell there and talking to him, even though he stole my thunder on the old post office. I'm going to let it slide. But his
sorry about
story
that.
was very good in there.
So, yeah, I did feel kind of bad.
Well, I was impressed. Like, I would see the fires burning in the building from my office, and I go, okay, your story is much better than mine, Russell.
Sorry, but I had a real. I know we're goofing around a little too much, but so Andrew started the SIBO's offices are in the old post office, and Andrew started up with, "Do you guys know what this building is?" And I just trampled all over him what he was starting to talk about, and the reason being is my office when I was in the education department at SIBO looked right at the post office, so I could see lots of interesting activity, including squatters burning fires at night to stay warm inside the abandoned post office before they cleaned it up real good.
Yeah, people forget then who go see that now that was, you're right, one of the largest pretty much abandoned open structures for decades in any major city. So they finally put it to work with the SIBO and then some fancy little restaurants down there in the lobby. All sorts of fun. Speaking of fun, let's keep rolling with the fun here on the show. Right on into the land of VIX futures. Does it get any more fun, I ask you listeners, than looking at the vol surface? The answer is no. And if you say yes, you're listening to the wrong show. But kicking it off out here, listeners, the front portion of the VIX futures curve was up slightly. I'm sure if I re-racked this right now, it probably would be about flat. But as we kicked off the show, we had the AUG future up about 1/4 point, and the SEP future up about a similar amount, about 1/4 point as well. Looking out on the curve, we're hanging out pretty close to where we were this time last year. I'm trying to see if there's any aberrations, if some of that October or into March of next year. Those have been the two hot spots on the curve for a while, and they remain so again this week. I'm looking here right now. October is still about 0.4 point above. It was 1822 a week ago, 1862 when we kicked off the show. And then March was at an 1880 at about an 1875. So those have been the two hot spots for a little while. And they're both, October's a little higher. March is kind of unched out there. Other than that, not a heck of a lot of evolution out there in the curve. Let's go around the horn the opposite of the way. Mr. Rock Lobster, we'll start with you. I think catching your eye in the world of the VIX futures, sir.
Well, I mean, we actually have we have once again like a funky curve going into the weekend. I mean, the market is definitely taking a breather up. You have a solid VIX drop today, but the curve is basically kind of flattening up. So you have, again, my favorite indicator. 9-day volatility is still, I believe, how is it going to end up today? 17, yeah. So 9-day volatility is still solidly over VIX cash. So 1722 for 9-day VIX versus the 30-day at 1648. And that is both higher than the August future, but not the SEP. So the curve is, I would say, normalizing. And I think part of it, Mark and I were talking about this. The Q sold off almost exactly 10% from the top. So once those big tech earnings started coming in, we had been talking about it had to be priced for perfection. If they weren't perfect, the market was going to, punish them. And they did. And I think they just sort of punished all the stocks at once. They didn't even wait for the earnings. So, Google, we've got Microsoft coming out. I think Microsoft's going to fare a little better than Google, just because Google is so dependent on search now. It's a big deal for Google. Microsoft has a few more business lines, but still both pretty dominant companies. But as of right now, you look at it and you're like, wow. You have the curve never left kind of that broad contango all week, like the VIX futures curve. So even though we were selling off, it's like, and we had that, finally had that 2% down day, you didn't get the broad reaction from, you didn't get that broad reaction from VIX, meaning like the whole future term upended. You had a lot of short-term action because basically we went from a 5 realized vol environment to about 15 or 16 all of a sudden. Like all of a sudden there was some vol. So all of the short-term vols have to come up, but it didn't really upset the rest of the curve too much, which generally means the market is not looking for a sustained vol action, and that's what happened. We had another good conversation with Noel from Convex Trading, I think is, or Convexity Trading is this his hedge fund, and about how, you know, sort of how the DT, zero DT stuff could dampen some of that effect. So where you had, you know, there's kind of like that instant gamma available. And I think what it showed up is there's a lag in, like, I would say 3 to 10 day options in SPX and most of the major indexes. And those options just don't get very expensive anymore because essentially nobody wants them. And you know, if you're a market maker, you're not in a rush to raise the volatility on anything until somebody buys it. And if a lot of the action is centered around zero, same day options, you know, you let those midterm options die, I think that it probably generates more long gamma for the liquidity provider. This would be my guess because of the way it's priced. And, you know, they don't have to let it go up. And it creates, I think, some opportunity around that area. I don't know, you know, if it dampens the 30-day vol, but there's so many strikes, it just takes a little bit more time maybe to press VIX higher, and I think that's the case. But but again, you say that, but we're not really moving. I mean, SPX is down what, a couple hundred points from the top. I mean, the Q is not VIX or not the same options. And, you know, and that was down 10% in what, 3 weeks. So it's not, you're not getting super sharp drops. You know, possibly dealers have a lot of gamma, so they're buying a lot of underlying. That could be. But as right now, at least, like the front end is still a little elevated relative. And in general, that still means expect a little bit more movement in the short term. But that movement can also be upside. Like, why not be another 1.6% up, you know, on Monday? We do need Microsoft earnings, which are, and this will be fun. And, you know, when we get to the crystal ball, but everything but NVIDIA will be out by Friday morning, like big tech. And the reality is after that, where's VIX going to go? If even if the earnings are ho-hum and Apple's, let's say, down $10, right? You know, where's broad market volatility going to go? Because you've got the convention is not till the 21st. So it seems like that path is sort of set from a political point of view, at least on the Democratic side. Republicans know what their nominee is. And okay, now the earnings are done. They weren't great. Q is sold off. And where's volatility going? So from a path point of view, I think the market is still looking for chop until the Apple earnings. Probably like, you know, orbiting trading. I mean, when we rally, kind of sell it. And then when we maybe sell off too much, buy it. And I think that's what we got. But to me, that's kind of the next calendar date, which would make sense if you're trading volatility in the vol products. Again, just my opinion, of course, and it's Tusa would say that's my what is it, 100% guarantee or 50% guarantee that I'm right?
50%. Yeah, she's like a 48% guarantee, I think, actually. But,
yes, yes.
But yes.
Of course, I do have positions on that reflect those opinions. I'm just saying. So take that, listeners, for what it's worth.
Just saying. Mr. Rhoads, same question for you, sir. What's catching your eye on the vol surface this week?
Just, it's kind of, Andrew's bringing up the 9-day. I'm looking out at the 30-day, which I guess is going to remain at a premium. Or I'm sorry, the 3-month relative to the 30-day, which will remain at a premium probably through the election, or at least until we get some sort of election certainty. It's rare that earnings has much of an impact on VIX, as whereas it does have a pretty big impact on VXN, especially Microsoft and Google and NVIDIA and Apple and all of those guys. About 16 years ago or so, they passed some new laws with respect to how liable management is when you report your earnings. And the ones that you get in trouble for lying on is your end of the year earnings. And Microsoft's, this is actually the end of their year. They end their year in June. Probably to save money on accountants because, they want to catch them off season or whatever. But I have found that you tend to get a bit more honesty out of companies with their fourth quarter report. So I wouldn't be all in bullish on Microsoft's earnings. But on the other side of it, they haven't had a really nasty earnings announcement reaction. Gosh, I want to say since about 2016. So they're such a behemoth. I guess there's just not a whole lot of surprises with respect to that one. Apple, on the other hand, but Buffett doesn't sell stocks unless there's some concerns. So I'd be paying more attention to Apple next week than Microsoft as far as earnings and maybe having an overall market impact, especially not just because Apple's got. They've had some sales issues, but they're caught in a bunch of geopolitical crap where they're trying to move some of their manufacturing to India, and so now the Chinese government the Communist Party has restricted whether or not you can own an Apple phone if you work for the government, which most people do. So I'd be more concerned about Apple being our cause of volatility next week as opposed to Microsoft.
That's an interesting point about they can pull less shenanigans this cycle of Microsoft than in other cycles, because we all know earnings is a big shell game at the end of the day, right? Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Look over here, Apple, we're buying a whole bunch of stock. Don't pay attention to the fact that we're not selling as many iPhones anymore. Or look at Tesla, EVs are getting killed, but hey, we have robots. There's a lot of that shell game going on. You're saying they can't play that as much this cycle, which is an interesting point, one I had not considered. So that's why we have Dr. VIX here on the show, listeners, as we keep on rolling. Speaking of all things VIX, let's get out there right now, listeners, into the hallowed halls of VIX options. A little less hallowed today. I think they're taking Friday off after a pretty epic week out there. Only 286,000 contracts on the tape right now. I say only, but that's pretty much about where we would expect it to be this time in July. Seasonally, this is not normally a rock'em sock'em robots period for vol trading, but then again, we're not normally on the heels of a week where we're whipsawing 1+% every few minutes, it seems like, in the major indices, where we had a president step down from the nomination, PCE coming out in the morning. So there are other factors that should be maybe driving a little bit more volume. Not really materializing today. The ADV also keeping to this theme of everything is unched. The ADV, 794,000, literally unched from where it was a week ago. So again, if you just listen to this show week on week and just focus on the data points, you would think a whole lot of nothing really unfolded over the course of this past week. When in reality, we all know it was anything but out there, listeners. In terms of the top 10 out here, for all of you out there who've been angling for a little bit of put action, this is your week. This is your Huckleberry, listeners. We are now 7-3 calls over puts. That's the lowest we've been on the call side and the highest we've been on the put side. Maybe all year, definitely in a while. I'll have to go back and see. I can't remember the last time we had 3 size put positions open in VIX. Again, look what can happen when you rally almost to 20. All of a sudden, people can trade puts again. Wow, wonder how that works. But if you want to find them, we got to kick things off right at one of them. There's 3 Waldos this week. One of them at number 10, 236,000 of the AUG 14 puts. A very sensible strike, all things considered. Number 9, 242,000 of the AUG 17 calls. Maybe you like those bad boys better. Number 8, 248,000 of the AUG 16s. Maybe you love those instead. In fact, looking here, it's kind of interesting. We don't have as much of a quote-unquote nonsense open this week. When you start moving around, the, shall we say, relevant strikes start to usurp the 47 halves and all the other pars, all the other nonsense out there. Number 7, 254,000 of the AUG 15 puts. So again, dare I say it, relevant. Number 6, 264,000 of the AUG 25s. Starting to get a little out there, but not crazy town. Number 5, our third and final put in our top 10 this week, 288,000 of the SEP 15 puts. So keeping the put party alive out to September. Number 4, 354,000 of the SEP 20s. Again, everything here fairly, dare I say it, reasonable. What's going on in VIX land this week? Number 3, 357,000 of the SEP 45s. All right, here we go. I knew we had to have one of them in here, listeners. Number 2, 399,000 of the SEP 45s. I do believe that's some vertical action. And then number 1, 408,000 of the SEP 17. So outside of that 45s, which are, again, the other side of a vertical, so not as crazy as they seem, then really we have a lot of, dare I say it, reasonable positions open here in VIX, which, again, is also a bit of a refreshing change from the 47 halves and the 55s and the pars and all the other nonsense we've been dealing with for quite some time. Speaking of nonsense, it's that time, listeners. It is time for Russell's Weekly Rundown.
Now, Russell's Weekly Rundown. Now, Russell's Weekly Rundown.
All right, Mr. Rhoads, the floor is yours. Regale us with your weekly nonsense, sir.
We'll regale you. Got one trade from Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. All of them are using the July 31st options. And we've seen a lot of focusing in on July 31st with the weeklies for the whole month. I don't know what's coming up next week, but who knows? So on Monday, I had somebody buy 3,250 of the July 31st 21 calls and paid 31 cents for those. I think that's a fairly decent trade. Trade I don't particularly like. Especially because I've just seen so many bullish VIX trades into next week. On Tuesday with VIX around 1450, somebody sold the July 31st 1720 call spread. They took in 18 cents. This was an opening trade based on the open interest. And the risk on this is $2.82 if we get if we get some sort of VIX surprise over the weekend. I know the odds of that are pretty low, but still. That risk reward, I just don't find that particularly attractive. Not terribly compelling. Maybe they've got. Hopefully, they own futures. In addition to that, on Wednesday, trade that I'm kind of so on. Somebody sold 4,800 of the July 31st 15 puts, mostly at 17 cents. It just appeared that they just kept hitting them all day long. Toward the end of the day, they were selling them for 12 and 13 cents. And VIX was mostly in the 17 to 1740 range when they were doing those executions. And then on Thursday, if somebody was going to twist my arm and say you got to be long volatility some way, shape, or form using the July 31st options, this may be the way that I would go about doing it. Yesterday with VIX at 1682. Somebody bought 2,000 of the July 31st 20 calls for 30 cents and sold 2,000 of the 30 calls for 6 cents, 24-cent cost there. I can't even remember when we were over 30 last time. So I think if you go into the 20s, that probably isn't such a bad trade.
All right. Good stuff there. You're right. Put sellers did seem to wake up this week. I noticed that in some of our other, it wasn't just people buying puts, listeners. We don't see a ton of put selling. Again, we were down at ridiculous strikes. That also was a reason for it. But now that we're back up, we were threatening 20 briefly, then put sellers waking up out here in VIX, which is kind of interesting, which gets me to the activity we saw out here in the big VIX options this week. Again, today, not a heck of a lot, 286,000 contracts on the tape. The big dog today, 21,000 of the Nove 22s going up. Those are opening. The only big opening print we really have up here today, and the rest is kind of kind of light paper, so we'll keep rolling here into yesterday. A lot more paper on the tape yesterday. In fact, I'm surprised it wasn't more, given just how much we were whipsawing yesterday. Down 1%, up 1%, down 1% again. I mean, it was all over the place. I mean, a lot of it was NASDAQ driven, but it was sucking the S&P along with it. So you would be forgiven for expecting maybe an over 1 million contract day yesterday. We got 826. That's nothing to sneeze at in late July, but still, you might be forgiven for expecting more. The big dog yesterday, 53,000 of the AUG 25s against 52,000 of the AUG 13 puts and 47,000 for number 3 of the AUG 14 half puts. Going back to the put selling thing I was just talking about, we were talking about this on the option block yesterday. That 14 half 13 put spread, I believe paper sold it initially 30,000 times. Looks like they obviously did more later. I think for prices around 32, 33 cents. So more put sellers out there. You like that, listeners, selling that 14 half 13 put spread in August for around 32, 33 cents? Someone did to the tune of about 50,000 contracts yesterday. So put selling alive and well in VIX again. All you needed was a little shot in the arm up to 20 and bam. Selling them puts. Number 4, 44,000 of the SEP 13 puts. And rounding out the top 5 yesterday, 37,000 of the AUG 17s. Wednesday, that was coming on the heels and heading into a lot of big earnings out there as well. So a big day on Wednesday, 1.45 million contracts on the tape on Wednesday. The big dog, 80,000 of the SEP 13 puts. So again, puts make it onto our radar. Number 2, 79,000 of the AUG 14 half puts. Put Palooza. Number 3, 57,000 of the AUG 15 puts. Number 4, here we go. We needed a little bit of nonsense injected into our arm, and here it is, 55,000 of the AUG 80s, 8-0s. That will surprise you that those were all opening. Not much OI on the 80s. Where was Matt on Wednesday? I'm guessing Matt from Rhoads might have been slinging some of his garbage VIX calls. And then number 5, 54,000 of the AUG 16 puts. Tuesday, also a beefy day, 758,000 contracts on the tape. The big dog, 89,000 of the the August 14 puts, followed by number 2, 54,000 of the SEP 17s. Number 3, 52,000 of the SEP 15 puts. Number 4, 51,000 of the SEP 16 calls. And number 5, 42,000 of the AUG 16 calls. Monday, we're coming into the week. President just steps down from being the nominee of his party. It's not quite historically unprecedented, but it has been quite some time since we've seen something like this. You'd be forgiven for expecting, maybe a little bit of an uptick on the opening print, just so I can get out of my UVIX. But no. And also vol coming in, and also really no paper. You would not look at this day and think, man, we had a multi-decade event happening over the weekend. 545,000 contracts. That's all we had on Monday. The big dog, 37,000 of the AUG 40s, followed by number 2, 27,000 of the SEP 17s. Number 3, 27,000 as well of the AUG 14 puts. Number 4, 22,000 of the SEP 20s. And rounding out the top 5 on a surprisingly light day, 22,000 of the SEP 16s. Speaking of surprisers, there's always some in store when we go overseas because it is time for the International Volatility Review.
It's time to explore what's happening in the volatility market beyond our shores. It's time for the International Volatility Review. The International Volatility segment is brought to you by Eurex, home of Euro stocks, VSTOXX, DAX, and the German government bond-based Eurobund, Eurobobble, Euroshots derivatives. Eurex is the leading European derivatives exchange. Learn more about trading VSTOXX futures and options, the European Volatility Benchmark, at www.eurex.com/VSTOXX.
All right, listeners, the great guessing game continues. What will unfold in VSTOXX week after week? Obviously, they are driven, as we are here domestically, by a lot of our domestic political action, but also there's the game afoot overseas in Europe as well. So a lot of things mixed into the heady stew that is VSTOXX week after week. And this week, coming down a bit, a little over a third of a point, about 0.37 this week at about a 16.15, 16.52 last week out there on VSTOXX. Mr. Rhoads, sir, what caught your eye out there in the realm of VSTOXX and international volatility this week?
VSTOXX, it remains in some backwardation on the short end of the curve. It's VSTOXX, and a couple of big headline grabbing things would be spot VSTOXX is below spot VIX, which we haven't seen that very frequently in the past couple of months just because of the political issues over there. That seems to be behind them. Honestly, I hate to be this guy, but I worry about the safety of the games, which basically are kicking off tonight.
They already had an attack on the rail lines. They already tried to burn the railways down.
They yeah. And it's kind of funny in Chicago. We're used to seeing fires by the railroad tracks because that's how they keep the switches from freezing.
Not quite the same in France.
We would have thought nothing of that, but in the middle of summer in France, I think they're trying to do some damage there. So we've got, August, about a 60-cent discount to spot. That's really indicating that they're expecting lower volatility in August. August is traditionally a very low volatility month for VIX. It's actually not. It's kind of in the mid-range for VSTOXX. So there's a little different seasonality there. Maybe it's people starting to come back from those nice month-long holidays that you get when you work over in Europe. Something that we continue to keep an eye on is the October-November spreads for both VIX and VSTOXX. It widened out a bit for VIX with the October premium. I think it was about 40 cents last week. It's around 60 or so, or 60, 65 cents now. It's still 90 cents over in Europe. Again, if you think that we'll see an October volatility crush relative to the November contract, if it looks like there's some certainty around the U.S. election, the European volatility might be a better way to go about playing that. And I did the biggest VSTOXX option trade last week. Was one of my favorites. Somebody bought 10,000 of the September 16 puts and sold 20,000 of the September 14 and a half puts. They paid 30 cents for that. They do well if we can get VSTOXX below 1570 for the September expiration. Maybe we'll be in a quiet period between the end of the games and really paying attention to the U.S. election, and that trade could work out particularly well. You could overshoot to the downside to 1330 on VSTOXX. There is risk on that one. I don't really worry about that part in this day and age.
They did it 1-to-1, right? So did us get their...
Yeah.
Oh, so yeah, I don't hate that one at all. Intriguing little downside play. Speaking of relative levels, actually we haven't seen in a while, listeners, is SVIX coming down a bit. It's not down as much as it was, obviously, getting back some of its gusto as VIX has kind of regained some semblance of normalcy on the show this week. But intriguing stuff out here for all things SVIX. And we've been talking for a while about selling puts in this, buying calls. Down 1.8 points right now. So that puts it at about a 43 even. Getting some volume out there, 5,000. That would have been a lot a few weeks ago because the ADV was right around 4,000 to 5,000. Now it's shot up about 1,700 contracts to 8,800. So SVIX slowly making its way back to the realm of normalcy. Mr. Rock Lobster or Mr. Dr. Bix, I know both of you play in SVIX. Anything catching your eye out there in inverse vol land this week?
Well, it's now getting to be the more fun part of the play where, you get to play. And we're going to be launching a SVIX product in the trading desk, kind of you're holding the SVIX, but then you're trading the options around it kind of strategically based on roll yield. So that will be, for all our trading desk people, it'll be free. But for new people that want to learn how to trade a short vol product, because there could be some of those times where the hair on the back of your neck stands up as the vol blows up and SVIX gets shellacked. But as the Thompson brothers says, there are better times to look for basically like a covering transaction. But I mean, the reality is SVIX there is only one stock, I could be wrong, but there's only one stock that's performed better than SVIX over the last 2 years, and I think it's NVIDIA. So there is something to the short vol thing. Granted, it's probably been a pretty good time for the SVIX product. So, but keep that in mind. It's every time it goes down, it's a chance for it to go back up. It's just being able to hold on when it makes the run back to 50. So those are That's what we're looking at as from the short vol point of view. So it is not the easiest thing to trade, and liquidity is starting to pick up in it. So I think it's something to keep an eye on. But like I said, I think the arc of this earnings is around Apple, with maybe a detour to Microsoft. And, unless there's some earth-shattering news, I think volatility is going to have a hard time holding up past August 1st.
Something that had a hard time holding up earlier this week took us all to the woodshed on Monday. UVIX was literally unched until a few minutes ago. Something popping off in UVIX right now because it just moved from about 610 to about 640, up about a third of a point now in the week. That may not sound like much, but it takes a Herculean effort to lift UVIX, especially heading into a weekend. So are we starting to see the worm start to turn out there today? We're still up, but maybe coming off the top a little bit out there. Either way, UVIX popping a little bit right now. Could have used that on the Monday print. 25,000 contracts on the tape right now in UVIX. The ADV is 19,000. That in and of itself is up 3,000. So UVIX continuing to head the way of the dodo mostly, but doing more paper as a result. The size positions out there right now, 10,000 of the 5 calls expiring next week on the 2nd. So, and about 8,900 of the 5 half calls expiring today. So those are looking probably pretty good, unless you overwrote the hell out of them, in which case not so much. But they're getting a little bit of a lift right now, so if they bought them. So intriguing stuff. In terms of action out there today, it's the 6 half calls expiring today, going up 5,300 times, all opening. So someone's rolling them bones on these 6 halves expiring in a couple of hours out here. Well, we're at 640, so they're starting to get into play. I don't know what's popping off out here in UVIX. Mr. Rhoads, outside of our weekend trade, anything catching your eye in your beloved UVIX right now, sir?
I was just saying, I just put in a market order to buy 50,000 of them. I guess that's why the market spiked up like that.
I knew it was you.
And I'm totally, just to make 100% sure, that was just me being stupid. No, I have no idea why it was rallying right then. I did not get to see Mark Sebastian's SVIX system, but I heard great things. So I'm gonna have to sneak in somewhere and find out a little bit more about that. As Andrew said, SVIX has been it's been a champ the past couple of years. It does give it up every once in a while, which I'm actually going to overlay doing something long on the weekends with constantly being short and see if that improves any of the performance. I have so much I want to do with this weekend thing that I just can't help myself.
Before we get out of the ETPs, let's move out of UVXY. Not a ton going on there. Let's go out to VXX. I know you might be saying, why is he jumping to VXX? He hates that thing. But you know what? The split is in, listeners. We were at a 47 when we kicked off the show. 47.60 right now. It's another one that's ticking up over the course of the show, which is deeply intriguing out here. If you were lukewarm on VXX, maybe at a 47, it changes the game out here. 16,000 contracts on the tape. That ain't a heck of a lot because the ADV is 48,000. So weirdly quiet out there today. But I don't know. This reset out here could intrigue some folks who are looking to play the erosion game. Mr. Rock Lobster, I think you're like me. You kind of washed your hands of VXX in the past. Has this reverse split caused you to stroke your chin and say,
Yes. So I'm looking for a VXX trade here. I mean, this week has been so kind of full of all. I'm not quite ready to jump into some puts in here, but it's coming because the reverse split is usually, there's very few free and lovely events in life that just happen randomly. And the volatility products reverse splitting is one of them. So, just looking at what puts to sell and starting to recalibrate everything on where VXX could be after, VIX goes back to 13. What is that? 4 points lower. It's about 25%. That could be kind of that could have an ugly smack on VXX right now. So, I'm sure by next week, again, like I said, because of Apple warnings, I'm a little hesitant to go jumping into vol puts too much after this little brushback. So I will be kind of like wait and see. But yes, I will be doing something there, I would guess, by close to the end of next week.
Mr. Rhoads, same question for you. Has the reverse split caused you to take a second look at VXX? I'll take it from your silence. The answer is no, sir.
You say no?
No, I did not. Okay, there we go. You say no?
Okay, no, I just said no. Because I think, I also we're coming up against time here, but no, I don't have much. If I'm going to get long, I'm going to get long for, some sort of a catalyst, and you're better off using UVIX if you think, there's some sort of a catalyst.
That is true as we keep on rolling, listeners, and go into the crystal ball.
It's time to peer into the future and reveal what the volatility gods hold in store. It's time to look into the crystal ball.
All right, listeners, let's see what we got here on the crystal ball for this week. Last week, it was myself. It was the Rock Lobster. It was Mr. Rhoads and Stefan. And let's see. VSTOXX, we said, closed at a 16.15. I was at a 16.75. Not terrible. Russell's at a 15, a little bit away. Andrew, 14.20, pretty far away. And Stefan at a 16.90, also not terrible. At least we had the right handle, but no winners there. VIX, I was at a 16.93 coming into the end of the show. I was at a 16.45. Russell was at a 15. Andrew's at a 14.85. So I was the only one even, again, with the right handle. So no winners this week, but I'll get to choose if I want to go, or maybe I'll have someone else go. And you know what? I will bravely blaze the trail this week, listeners. I shall go first. Let all others cower in my wake. And looking here at, again, what a topsy-turvy week to kind of end almost unched. Again, that just shows you how hard this crystal ball game really is, listeners. Ooh, you know what? Can we maintain this? We have earnings again next week. Could something pop off that gives us a little bit of the old spookage? You know what? I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say 1735 for VIX and VSTOXX. My goodness, this thing's all over the place. Russell was talking about a potential drop below VIX over there earlier on the show. Ooh, I don't know. That's a good question. What if we see the inversion? I'm going to say close. I'm going to say 1755 for VSTOXX. All right. Mr. Rock Lobster, you get to go next. What are you feeling, sir?
Well, I'm going to go with the same number I had last week. I thought there was a chance for earnings perfection from big tech, and I was wrong. All the earnings have been actually pretty good, but just not good enough to keep the stocks at at nosebleed prices. So now that we know that the earnings mostly have been good, just not great or not perfect, I think the bloom will come off. So what did I say, 1465 last week?
You were 1485 in VIX, 1420 in VSTOXX.
I think the VSTOXX will. I'm going to do 1525 in VSTOXX. I think this Paris Olympic thing is there's something to that, and I'm gonna do 1480 for VIX.
Slight tweakage for the Rock Lobster. Mr. Rhoads, sir, the final voice is yours. What are you feeling for next week?
I'm going to go between both of you. I'm going to do 16.5 for VIX and 1645 for VSTOXX.
Look at you playing the old
little bit of discountage there. And honestly, I know we do think about this. It's really just taking a signal from the VIX term structure versus the VSTOXX term structure. The August future is a little bit lower than the VIX August future in VSTOXX, which that the market's telling me that it expects VSTOXX to go down more than VIX.
I don't know. They burn some more train tracks. I think Andrew and I are looking better, but I'm looking the best at 17 double for VSTOXX. What are your prognostications, listeners? Get them in. If you're listening live, get them in on the live chat on the pro side. If you're listening after the fact on the podcast, get them in. Questions at theoptionsinsider.com is probably the easiest place to get them. We get them in on social media at Options as well. Get them in today, the day of the podcast, and then you too can be entered to win fabulous prizes. That is going to do it for us on the show today. That's also going to do it on the network for all you on-demand folks. All you pro folks, hang out. We'll be back in a little bit to break down the wild world of unusual activity on Options Oddities. And before we go, Mr. Rock Lobster, sir, if folks want more option pit goodness in their lives, where should they go? What should they do?
Yeah, 888-TRADE-01. Our trading desk will go on sale next week with our new SVIX product. So if you want to feel like Russell Rhoads, but not actually be him, but, try to feel like him for a little bit, we will be trading SVIX and Trading Desk on adding it as basically like a portfolio approach to it. So check that out next week. You'll start seeing stuff on call 888-TRADE-01. We'll make sure we send you the link on time for our webinar on that particular subject.
So you did officially announce the SVIX strategy. It has been announced and unveiled?
Well, we announced it at the conference.
Oh, I missed that one.
We did not announce exactly what we're doing, but it's a 3-part strategy against the underlying.
Mark's been teasing it forever. I want the nitty gritty. All right.
Right. Well, I'll share it with you once we, once it becomes official. But we'll give you some nitty and gritty with it.
He's been teasing forever. If you want more teases, listeners, optionpit.com, the place. Can they get replays of the summit, the recordings there?
We are. I don't know what we're doing because a lot of people paid for the live stream. So
yeah, of course. Maybe you charge.
We're providing individual, like everybody that was there. So if you want your segment, the people that did the presentation, if they wanted the replay, we're sending it to them. They can do what they want with it. But I don't know if we're going to provide the whole summit replay.
So people can't buy access to the archive after the fact to check it all out.
Yeah, it's possible. It's possible.
Something to check out, listeners. Optionpit.com is the place to go. And Mr. Rhoads, where should they go if they want more of your good goodies?
Twitter at Russell Rhoads or me on Substack, russellrhoads.substack.com. I'm getting better in the Substack. I'm trying to at least post 3 times a week. So at least trying to do that. But those are the 2 places to find when I'm doing stuff.
Stacking Pro over there, Mr. Dr. Vix. Check him out. And, of course, on the Twitters, RUSSELLRHOADS. All one word on the old Twitter. Give him a follow. Good nuggets coming out there in between appearances on this fine program. Of course, if you want more VSTOXX nuggets, only one place to go, UREX.com, EUREX.com, or go straight to mainlining it, inject it right into your veins, stocks.com, STOXX.com. Both of those will get you to the VSTOXX data. You can get in there till your heart's content. That's going to do it for us on the on-demand side. For all you podcast listeners, thank you for joining us this week. Again, for you pro folks, hang out. We'll be back in a little bit for Options Oddities. If you want to join the fun party that is the pro, a lot of folks, I should say, diving in there this week to check it out. TheOptionsInsider.com/pro is the place to go. Back again on Monday for the option block all the way through to next Friday, another episode of Volatility Views. Stay safe out there, everybody.
The International Volatility segment is brought to you by Eurex, home of Euro stocks, VSTOXX, DAX, and the German government bond-based Eurobund, Eurobobble, Euroshots derivatives. Eurex is the leading European derivatives exchange. Learn more about trading VSTOXX futures and options, the European Volatility Benchmark, at www.eurex.com/VSTOXX. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.